Here we are. It's Blueies and Shoeies. Talking all things rugby. Big Poochie here with the one and only Eagle. How are you, my mate?
I'm good, sir. I'm good. It's always lovely to be here with you late at night drinking tea.
Drinking tea. I've got the vino, but it's probably a slight difference in our personalities, should we say? All right.
Fair point.
Well, you drink the tea. I'm on the vino. But mate, we are talking post first match reviews. I guess our key takeaways from the two key tests, and then also a little bit about what we expect from these next games. A quick 2-second point on the Welsh Aussie series, mate. I think we were both sort of saying in our previous podcast that both teams are very much at the same stage in essence in terms of really transitioning. I think we saw a game where we saw green shoots. I think from the publication Raw in Australia from the Aussie perspective, which is probably what I expected. I expected to see green shoots from a Eddie Jones Wallabies team
Yeah.
to be a little bit better coached, a little bit better prepared, and probably playing to the Aussie strengths, which is more that backline play and the like. Look, I think Wales, have a couple of key players are out. Again, we saw some good stuff, but as expected to be quite disjointed.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, to sum it up on a broad level, I think you've got two very experienced coaches there that have been given a really tough job each. The thing that I've liked about them, that's what probably a bit happy Australia won, is Joe Schmidt's doing a really good job of building a game plan around the players he has.
Yeah.
He's adapting it to Australian style, whereas I still think Gatlin's got a way of how he wants to play and he's trying to get them to do that. And, you could see it in the frustration of the Welsh guys because the thing that cost them that game was penalties. I think they
Yeah.
gave away something like 20, 21 penalties. You can't win a test match.
Can't
if you
win
go
any
double
test
digits.
match. No. Yeah, no
Yeah.
matter who you play, mate. And the sad to see Hooper out early doors.
Yeah.
There is no one that could convince me. As much as I love Eddie Jones, probably more for his entertainment on the media side and certainly the way he took England to that semi-final. Again, that would probably be one of the greatest games I've ever seen against New Zealand, possibly the greatest performance against a Kiwi team
Yeah.
in that 2019 semi-final. But no one can convince me that he was bad for culture. You know what I mean? That you could see that bloke was the only world-class player
He
for
was the
Australia
heartbeat
for
of-
about 3 or 4 years there.
Yeah. He was the beating drum that was the Australian rugby team.
Yeah,
So I don't quite understand it. I generally, when I saw he wasn't making the Olympics, I thought, okay, cool, he's going to come back and do one last hurrah and do the British and Irish Lions.
yeah.
But clearly, his heart's probably not in it maybe anymore.
Yeah,
And
he might have felt maybe hard done by the
done by.
Rugby
But
Australia
in
and
saying
washed
all
his
that, I
hands of
mean,
it.
they've got some good youngsters coming through. I mean, Fraser McGrath, I think, is very much like another Michael Hooper coming through. So they've got that. I think the thing that kind of warmed my heart the most in any way, shape, and then an Australian could warm my heart was seeing Tom Wright score that try.
I like Tom
Yeah,
Wright.
because
I
he's
like
great.
it.
Yeah, I thought he was
But
very unlucky.
he's been the epitome of Australian rugby for the last 5 years. Again,
Yeah,
under Rennie and under Eddie Jones. Flashes of brilliance, some good stuff, and then just a lot of mistakes in between. And again, it's not consistent. But that obviously the breakthrough, fine. But that sort of double step at the end, I mean, nice little touch, mate. I like that.
but to do that at the speed he moves
Yeah,
at is impressive.
yeah. One knee would have snapped into what the crowd
I
one
had to go
way,
ask mine after
and
just watching the replay.
the other knee would have snapped into the crowd on the other side, mate. When you see these sort of wheelie barrows or something, and the screws come loose, and it all just
Yeah,
sort of comes tumbling. That would have been Poochie going for the try line.
yeah,
Would have just given up and fallen into a heap. But no, that was a great try. Should be interesting. I expect probably very much similar stuff for the next test. But I think when you've got a few young players there, which Australia really do, especially when Eddie picked such a young team for the World Cup, if those guys are going to be continuously picked by Joe, then what I'd expect is for the next couple of years, again, to be a little bit inconsistent, but gradually build a bit more solid foundations, but equally you'll be able to see where they're going, what they're trying to do, and it will be noticeably better week on week, albeit, again, I think they're going to be starting from a low base.
Yeah, listen, I mean, my understanding of the way Joe Schmidt coaches, and it's very technical and detailed, and like everyone gets a score for every breakdown they enter and approach. But what it does is it gives you a very clear understanding of the standards. So, if he gets that right early, you will see progress from them. But I think the more important thing is they just keep winning. Because
helps the fans get through into the stadium as well.
Sorry?
Helps the fans get into the stadium, mate, as well, which is obviously key.
Exactly. It'll just be getting some belief in the young guys, and then two, getting people there supporting, and then they'll carry themselves home from there. But yeah, listen, we'll see how they go. But put it this way: after watching the first bit of that, after watching the England New Zealand game, it kind of looked like watching Premier League, and then flicking over to watching Sunday League. Sunday League with the dads.
Well, let's rid ourselves of that B. Let's act like snobs, mate, and rid ourselves of that B grade trash, and move on to the sexy stuff. That prime rib, that A grade Wagyu beef, and talk England, New Zealand. Let's trade a takeaway for a takeaway. What sort of? Give me your quick, big takeaway from the game, or something you took from the game as far as a trend or a interesting piece.
Probably from an England perspective, it just really was the one that got away. They really, in my opinion, should have won this game. Marcus Smith just as much as he's.
I thought they could do it, mate. I thought they could do it, didn't I? I thought they could do it, especially team on team. My worry was the bench. But I'd seen enough in that Six Nations to think they could do it.
Mate, I saw your worries coming true when they brought a 12-year on in 20 minutes.
I hope his parents signed the consent form. Fucking, is his balls dropped?
He looks in his life. I tell you that.
It looks like Yamin Yamil, who played for Spain, who scored that wonder goal in the semi-finals of the Euros. I'm not sure who looks older between them.
Yeah,
but Baxter looks about 12, the lad.
So yeah,
but that's the big issue, right? I mean, obviously, without deviating from your point, not having Genge goes back to my point earlier around obviously their depth up front. But look, he seemed to manage fairly well. But why do you think they lost it, mate?
Just the kicking and those small it's those small little things that have to get right. Like, I was trying to write, I thought they had a really good balance to their game. And, they
100%
mixed
agree.
up the contestable.
Yes, absolutely, mate.
And then I was still but they're missing something. And I was like, is it their old front row? No, it wasn't. Their set piece was good. The backs were amazing. Those youngsters we spoke about were great. And then I was like, it was just making those little mistakes.
Yeah.
There was just knock-ons at the wrong time. Loose turnovers.
I think those are going to happen, mate. But like you say, they win the test match if there was quite two. I mean, one in particular was an absolute.
Yeah, two of them were sitters. And don't get me wrong, that's a hard stadium to kick in. It's got a roof on, but the corners are open, so the wind swirls through it. But mate,
he's a good kicker, mate. He kicks in England. There'd be the similar sort of environments in Premiership. The English between Farrell, Ford, and Smith are generally 70 minimum %, but more 80% kickers.
But it comes back to identity then, I guess, and DNA, and the Springboks have got that right. The Irish have probably got that right. The All Blacks, I feel, have lost theirs, but they'll think they'll rebuild it over Razor. And the English, as I said, there's a balance to their game they're getting right, but you still need to get that DNA. And, mate, to be fair, They've given us, one of the world's best kickers in Wilkinson, and they've had a few of them throughout time. It's just probably the part they need to get right, because so much of their game is based on pressure.
Yeah.
So if you want to build pressure, you've got to build scoreboard pressure.
Well, my point was to your earlier point, which I'll just cover off, was I thought England varied their game really well, just taking New Zealand out of any kind of flow themselves.
Yeah.
And just, between kicking game, running game, just keeping New Zealand, both defence and attack, guessing. I mean, going to defence, actually, in terms of England, why was the rush defence such a, not so much a surprise? Why didn't New Zealand overcome the rush D more easily and have better ideas?
Just because the rush defense is really hard to play against, because it's in your face and it's forcing you to make crucial decisions in split seconds. And that it's something they're going to have to work on. I mean, also, we would be fair to New Zealand, it was their first game, and you could see they probably looked a bit rusty.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Justin Marshall speak, and he was highly critical of them. And I'm certainly more in his camp, because they play rush. Surely there's, again, I know you've watched more Super Rugby than I have, and again, I know the level improves, but you know what's going to happen. So I know sometimes there's a level of surprise, but it just didn't look like there was no kicks to a Talia to vary things up. There
was one that scored the first try off it, but again, you had time to execute the kick. In terms of, they just haven't got used to each other because none of them run it properly. The Hurricanes run a bit of one, but it's just not the aggressive speed.
Yeah.
And you can see Felix Jones has taken the South African system there, where they will not allow you more than 3 passes. Like you got to work on breaking line 2 passes. The secret to getting it right is you need to have a few of the kicks and a bit of variation, but that's limited. The key though is your ball carriers need to get you go forward, dominate, and then you can worry about it.
Yeah.
And that's where the All Blacks were probably very weak. The only guy who constantly got them good go forward ball was Patrick Tuipulotu. And you saw the difference was once Asafa Amua came on, the reserve hooker, and then he got some, and they looked a lot more threatening then.
Yeah, look, I must say, I mean, during and again, to your point about executing, I don't think the Springboks were executing it very well. This is obviously during COVID, when the games, the whole rugby championship was almost played in the Gold Coast, and it just looked like Cooper was sitting a little bit further deeper, and then they had Karevi then sitting further deeper. So what would happen is the time it takes Peter Steph du Toit, Franco Mostard, or whoever is involved to make the distance between the eighth man's feet at the breakdown all the way to Karevi, who's then hitting the ball at pace, is bound to split up, right? So they're not all running at the same speed, just naturally there's a few gaps. And then when you've got a stepper like Karevi who can then open it up, see a gap or open it up, I just thought, again, it was probably not executed by South Africa as well. But equally, I just thought that sort of, you're starting further back. So if you get caught out, then you're losing big advantage, right? You're losing on the game line a huge amount. But I just thought, God, you'd think the bloody Kiwis, for how smart they are, you would have. I just would have thought a higher level of strategy to counter it.
No, and that's what they still have to get right. I don't, they and like, listen, they only had a short time for this, so I think they'll get it. They have realised that, like, in terms of putting the footwork on, and the exact setup you're using is actually how Stephen Perifetta set up the try to score, because he did that. Ben Earl came up on him, but he was just a lot slower than the South Africans would be, because the guy that shuts that down for South Africa is Jesse Kriel. But what happened is Ben Earl came up, but mate, Stephen Perifetta gave him such a sidestep that he looked like he was looking for coins on the floor. Because it was just like,
I've lost my wallet.
Was it? Yeah, mate, it was. You don't recover from those for a long time. So they're getting there, but listen, it's going to be a work on for them. But that's why, I mean, definitely the All Blacks weren't the finished product. And that's where I'm saying it was the missed opportunity, I think, for England.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I
But,
mean,
I
without
mean, the
jumping
other
too
key
far.
point though, while we put in the
Yeah.
boot into the
Next
Kiwis,
one.
is I just find it the height of irony that the team or the organisation in the world that wants to speed the game up and says that we got to have a shot clock for taking penalties didn't have an actual shot clock and their kicker got timed out. I mean,
Embarrassing, mate. Well,
irony.
God, the New Zealand budget. I mean, I'm not sure who's prime minister, considering the beautiful Jacinta is no longer in charge. But they need to have a word with the government, mate. Is it government? Is it New Zealand Rugby that
New Zealand
needs to
rugby.
shell out a couple of pennies for, or just get someone to go 60, rip a page off, 59, rip a page off for the corner? You know.
Yeah, that was a
Cheap
shocker.
bastards, eh? Cheap bastards. But yeah, look,
Cheapy.
and talking about the kicker, one of my key points was, don't think Damien McKenzie improved his chances at all at fly half, mate. I'll be honest, it just again it looked like Damien McKenzie of old. Great Super Rugby player. When Mo'unga comes back, I think he'll be like, cheers for the jersey, mate. Thanks for keeping it warm, but off you go to the bench. But I'm not sure what your thoughts were, mate.
I'll beg to differ. I didn't think he was standout, but I thought he was pretty good for running the cutter he had to. I'll be honest, I thought both of the halfbacks were terrible. TJ Perinora was better than Finlay Christie, but he still wasn't great. So
Yeah, Perinara was trying his usual stuff, trying to gee up certain situations. But in terms of actual rugby, he was poor, mate. Very poor.
So there's that. But no, listen, I thought McKenzie's passing game, for all things considered, was still pretty good. I mean, he just has to get used to probably playing with Geordie Barrett and Rico a bit more. But I thought like his crossfield kicks and some of his kicks, as well as his ability to put some of those big forwards away, was really good. There was two from memory where he put, one was Barrett, the other one was Tuipulotu, through the midfield, and they trucked it up well. And I think that's his strength. Like, he'll play really flat, have those things. But I agree with you. They probably need some of those wingers and other guys coming out the back.
Yeah. Who did he get monstered by? He got absolutely
he's going to get
smoked.
It will happen multiple times. He gets.
But I don't know if it was Ben Earl or someone, and then someone obviously just lay on him, just add an extra 120 kilos to the load, to stop him breathing. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he gets up, like I said that last week. I mean, whilst I'm undecided or more edging towards, I don't think he's going to be the man. He has taken some hits in his time, given his size, but credit to him for getting up.
Yeah.
A quick point though, from my end, was we discussed Razor and maybe the lack of confidence that maybe we've seen in the press conferences. I must say, there's something endearing. Sounds probably a little bit cheap, but I can see how authentic he is post match around. He is, mate. But the one thing I'd say is, like, in a sport of absolute alphas, in a sport of fucking gladiators trying to take each other's heads off, there is that sort of macho sort of ego where you got to be the hardest of the hard type guy, and not so much maybe as a coach. When you think about Farrell for Ireland, like I say, he's the alpha of all alphas, and a lot of that stems from his playing career. But that sort of slight bit of vulnerability, I think actually players and hopefully I think the public have already liked him, warmed to Razor, but I think the players will actually warm to that, to go, this lad's wearing his heart on his sleeve, for us, rather than, if you don't get me wrong, mate, like, you find Fozzie and even the great coach before him, just I tend to find them a little bit boring, mate. It's a standard. When you want to do the gimmick coach, the boys played really well. There's things we need to improve on, versus a bloke that's literally wearing his heart on his sleeve, and you're like, fuck it. That's exactly how I felt, as a fan, as a player, as a coach or whatever it might be. We could all see ourselves in Razor a little bit. And I think that bit of authenticity, I think, actually will bode well for him.
Yeah, and that's how he's always been, and he is good. I think the one thing that I'm really enjoying seeing with him, and it kind of goes back to the whole Eddie Jones thing, is like Eddie Jones was saying his biggest mistakes, especially with England and a bit of Australia, was he didn't do enough coaching.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of news, a lot of video coming out. Like Razor is stuck.
He's going to be on the tools, mate.
And he's literally takes the loose forwards. He's getting stuck.
Yeah. He's going to have the tool belt on. Seriously, 7 a.m. He's going to have the steel caps on, mate. 7 a.m. Not be late for work. You know what I mean? The lads aren't going to be cracking the cans, going, "Oh, good afternoon." You know what I mean? He's going to be there front of line, mate. But I think that's pretty much it for me. Yeah, so it was poor kicking from Smith. I had England's varied game plan, Razor's authenticity. Why did England's defence look as good as it did? Because I was a bit surprised that New Zealand didn't have more to offer. Mackenzie again, I felt was a little bit light, and maybe finally, like I say, obviously, sorry, we did touch on that, the Baxter piece, and Joe Marler, it looked like, was it De Groot? De Groot might have got the best of him legally or illegally in the scrums, might have sort of folded him up a bit.
But they said he's injured, but I don't know, I think it's just his pride. He's got his free holiday, said his ice cream.
Yeah.
Yes, pension now, he's
taken 2 weeks on a flight to get to New Zealand, and he's lasted about 6 minutes.
So yeah, I don't know what the story's going to be there, but I thought that the New Zealand pack actually went really well. Like I think I said to you, listen, these guys can scrum. I thought they did a very good job. But I mean, probably the last thing or two last things for me to touch on it, I just, we spoke last week about Sevier Reese. I thought he was superb, and then also just Mark Taleo, just 11 defenders beaten. He is just such a good player.
The one thing I'd say about Talea, right, and you're 100% right, Talea in the 2015 team would have scored 15 more tries by now. Because what he would be doing is beating one player, maybe two, and scoring a try.
Yeah.
What he's doing now is catching the ball often on the back foot, right, and then having to, a little bit like he did against South Africa. Do you remember when he got that ball, sort of long pass? And then what happens with a long pass is you get a defender typically running. So Willemse running across to try, cut him off. And then obviously he just takes the ball the other way and the defender's sort of short-handed, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about, wow, we've got a guy that's beating 10 defenders and maybe getting a try a game versus a guy that's beaten 6 defenders with 2 tries,
Yeah.
That'd be the New Zealand stat in 2015, the second one, right? And what we're seeing is Talea is beating all these guys for maybe not so much stat lines.
Reward. Yeah. And it's, the stat's amazing. So out of the tier 1 teams in the world, he averages 9.4 defenders beaten a game. To put that in perspective, the rest of the chasing pack, who are the likes of Damien Pinot, Duane van der Merwe, Darcy Graham, and Damien McKenzie.
Let me guess. I'm guessing 3 or 4.
5.
5. Okay. Yeah. So nearly double.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he's a freak.
Well, let's quickly finish up, mate, with this test match and talk all the series and think about I guess what our expectations and predictions are for the final game. Certainly, I think there'll be a more greater improvement from my end from New Zealand, especially again in terms of dealing with the rush D and therefore winning the game. And then finally, obviously, you're playing at Eden Park, and there is this. I don't know how big it is, but there is the thing about obviously North being right at the end. The North being right at the end of their. Yeah, Eden Park, you never lose. And, Northern Hemisphere at the end of their season. So is there much petrol left in the tank? So From your end, mate, what are you thinking?
No, I think, listen, Eden Park's going to be a hard place to go. The All Blacks will get better. It's another week together. They would have learned. They probably defended a bit softer than Razor would be happy with. So I'd expect a few more hard shoulders this week, especially stopping those big English ball runners that got good go forward. So, yeah, I think that's where it's going to be. My only concern is it's an Australian referee.
Come on, Zay. Come on. I want to get Duarte on the double shoey intake next week. But predictions, mate. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think I had England to at least scrape one.
My original call was New Zealand 2-0. It nearly wasn't that on the weekend, but I'm still going to stick to it. It
should have absolutely. That is a dead absolute giveaway. I thought England played great. I don't think there's much more better they can play unless there's a bit more X factor. I mean, you saw Fayu Aboso, and he's got some legs on him, mate. I tell you,
they need to get the ball to him more.
You need to get unless there's a bit of X factor, a runaway try. I can't see New Zealand not having a bit more variety in their game to get past the rush D. But here's with fingers crossed, mate, for both you to take both in terms of the shoeies. But we'll leave it there for the series, and then in the next episode will be our Boxing Ireland. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, man.